Simpleflips is a funny guy. I especially love his Lego Star Wars race that he did recently. Well, something I saw was very concerning, out of character, and dark. You see, in something that now seems to be an entirely erased and forgotten, forbidden stream, he raced Lego Star Wars, the complete saga. During the race of 2, somebody in chat asked him to do complete saga, and he jokingly said no and fuck you. However, this stream, which seemingly came and went as fast as it did, had him racing that game, and he once again partnered with Marcus. All was going as usual. Simpleflips was being his usual funny self and purposely messing up and not paying attention and not caring and messing with Marcus and tormenting him, and Marcus going like, please, and Simpleflips laughing evilly and going like, derpa, and, the usual good stuff. However, by the time they were done with episode 3, 6 hours had already passed, and Simpleflips asked, how long is this game again? And then somebody else that was racing with them answered, and there are 6 episodes, and the last 3 are a lot longer than the first 3. Simpleflips then got a bit nervous, and he was like, I might have to opt off this one, and they continued anyway, and Simpleflips kept on slowing it down more and more by tormenting Marcus. However, at this point, it seemed like he became a lot more real and deranged with the torture. He kept killing him over and over again, and somehow, at some point, the character Marcus was controlling became completely suspended in chains that had them held in midair. And Marcus was going like, please! And Simpleflips started laughing more and more. And he was like, ha 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 ha! And his character began to die painfully. And I heard a scream emit from the game that usually isn't in the Lego Star Wars games. I've never heard it uttered before. And then Marcus started to scream the same way. It was as if he was really feeling the pain that Simpleflips was inflicting upon his character physically. This was beginning to feel all too much like a crude bit. They were going too far. And then, by the time they got to chapter or episode 5, Simpleflips was dragging it to over 12 hours. And by this point, Marcus was just going like, please, stop. And Simpleflips almost looked like he was glowing red, and his eyes seemed to be going in different places, and he was like, derpa, and then he began to subject Mark into some of the worst pain imaginable. He began to mess around, and then once Marcus ran in front of his character, he began slowly decapitating him, something that I know for sure you can't do in the Lego Star Wars Complete Saga video game. And Simpleflips began laughing madly, and I could hear Marcus screaming as this happened. And then Simpleflips said, I'm gonna move on over here and send you to gay baby jail. And Marcus started screaming a lot more empathetically and loudly, and I felt so bad for him. He was pleading with Simple, and he was like, no, please, not there, please. And then Simple said, bye-bye, I'm gonna move you into here, and then I could hear Marcus start screaming, and the scream faded more and more and more away to the point where it was just entirely gone, and Simpleflips began laughing way too much, somebody else said, I think this race has been going on too long. And Simple was like, nah, you make me suffer through this game. I'm gonna make everyone pay for it. And then he got up and he started going like, wahoo, wahoo, wahoo. And Simpleflips did a real life backwards long jump out of the room he was in and into the unknown. The stream just stayed still there with him out in the camera. I didn't know what happened, so I just left at this point. However, I began to notice something was odd in a different stream. Finny was streaming, and he was all like, okay, chat, today we're gonna spin and make funny poop noises and do the Mario. And however, once Finny was talking, a loud crash was heard near him, and Simpleflips, he could be heard coming in like, yo, and he leaped into Finny's room, and I could overhear it through the mic where Finny's like, ah, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And Simple is like, dude, I am moving, ha 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 ha. And I could hear Finny screaming, and the chat was freaking out. And then suddenly the face cam came on, and Simple was on it, and he was glowing red, and he had a mad, deranged, big smile on him, like the Joker 2019 trademark. And he was like, oh ho ho, I'm gonna get you all. And he was like, and he was like, do you remember the time you all maybe played this? And he pointed, and I could see Scooby and Dickhead Shaggy next to them. And he blasted off Shaggy's head, and the blood and brain and skull matter flew onto Scooby's face, and it was hyper-realistic. And Scooby began monologuing about how deep this makes him feel. And Simpleflips smacks Scooby across the face, and he's like, stop monologuing! And then he said, now I'm gonna rip off Dighead 2's head. And Scooby began going like, Simpleflips was ripping him off, spine disconnecting from head. And then Simpleflips, guess what he did? He took Scooby's head, and he let the blood fly off it onto his face, and he began consuming it, and he's like, ha ha ha, and he was like, oh wait man, I'm on a diet, I should maybe just stick to his protein bar, and I've been doing great this year. And he tossed aside Scooby's head, and then once again, Simpleflips did the wahoo, 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 and he backwards long jump away from Finny's place, and I knew where he was heading next. Jotless was streaming, and he was like, alright chat, and he was delaying the game he was going to play by like 30 minutes, and he kept on repeating the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. And by the time he was ready to play, I could hear the same crash, and then Joe once again going like, what the fuck? And he was like, Simpleflips! And Simpleflips waved, and he began to cackle madly even more. And then he was like, I remember this race. And then the stupid animals from Madagascar appeared, and they were locked up and chained up. And then he took a knife, and he was like, dude, this is fucked up, as he was sawing off their heads. And he was like, I wonder who made this. And even though Simple was doing it himself. And Joel, determined to resist and do something about it, began to power up by shoving a bunch of stink bugs and cardboard boxes down his throat. And then he was like, I got the snoosk and the Lido shoes. And then he began to power up into the super form. But Simple laughed. And he was like, And Joe tried fighting him. He was like, I'm not going to deal with this stupid bullshit. And then Simpleflips began pause buffering, giving him an unfair advantage against Joel, who was easily defeated. And then Simpleflips, after tormenting Joel and sending him to GBJ, had one more to do, and he took Pac-Man and Grandpa from the Tetris game, and he began slowly hooking up electrical currents to their nipples and shocking them slowly to death. And Simpleflips was laughing the entire time. He began dancing. He was like, I've got the schmoves, and I felt so bad for them, and hyper-realistic blood began pouring off Grandpa's eyes, and Simpleflips was like, Grandpa, no! And he began shaking Grandpa vigorously, as if to torment him even more. And then once it seemed like that their life force was entirely gone, he began laughing even more and more, and he was planning on going after Chat next. However, a distraction came. It was the Lego versions of the Star Wars Heroes gang from the original trilogy. It was Luke and Han and Leia and Chewbacca and Lando and R2-D2 and C-3PO. And they had this plan to create a diversion where Simpleflips started pointing and laughing at them, knowing that they couldn't stop him, and they sacrificed themselves. He ripped apart C-3PO, and he started contorting all of his limbs and his head. It was a bloody, oily mess, and C-3PO was like, oh! And he began bashing R2-D2 with it, and he was laughing this entire time. He was like, I'm gonna do this how I do best, and he took out the laser gun. He started sliding around and blasting at all of them, and they were all gonna die, and Chewbacca tried approaching and attacking him, and he was like, and Simpleflips was like, what's that? You gotta go out? And then he began bashing Chewbacca in the face and stomping on him, and he was like, call me nasty one more time! Call me nasty one more time! Until Chewbacca was an unrecognized Lego bloody pulp. I didn't know Legos could bleed like this, but it was so horrifying and hyper-realistic. And then he froze Han into the Lego brick, and he was like, that's so cute, and he was just like in the movies where they died 6 times in an explosion. However, this gave enough time for Luke, Leia, and Lando to finish the summon. They sacrificed themselves so they could do this, and out came Dark Magician. And Simpleflips was like, what is this Dark Magician bullshit? And then they ordered Dark Magician to do Obliterate and do the Link 313 attack with the infinity power that goes beyond infinity. And Simpleflips began getting blasted by this, and he was screaming like, ah! And the world, instead of a gay baby jail, began to turn to Tomato World, and he was still like, you can't beat me, and he began covering up the blast with a Peanut Butter Gamer t-shirt, and he laughed at this, and all seemed well. However, just when everything seemed to be doomed, I could hear a carts railing in, and Simpleflips looked where the noise was coming from, and then, zooming towards him, it was Callan from the 5D series, and he raised his fists, and he was like, do you want a taste of the Callan special? And Simpleflips was like, ah, no! And then he gave Simpleflips the Callan special, totally knocking him off his feet. And then Yami Yugi from Season 0 appeared. He was like, it's showtime, and then he began cursing Simpleflips and sending him to the Shadow Realm, cursed forever to be in gay baby jail, and he'd been screaming, ah! And then a flash happened, and Simpleflips appeared back in his room, And he was like, 23 hours and 32 minutes. Not bad. In 55 seconds. He then, however, decided that this stream was way too much to edit and handle, and he didn't like how much he was on screen for, so he decided quietly that he would remove this, and I believe he did some other shenanigans to erase this memory from other people's brains. And he also revived and freed everybody who was a victim of this. However, I somehow survived, doomed and cursed with this knowledge, forever being sickened by it, and trapped in this nightmare of GBJ Shmoo.